Tonight on trade and security, Canada says the U.S. agrees to work towards a mid-July deadline.
Mr. President, on Editorial and Iran, the deal is achievable within days, within weeks. Is there that?
But after making his G7 presence felt, Donald Trump announces he's leaving early. Predictably unpredictable. So how to measure his short visit? And for Prime Minister Carney, a win and a loss? The White House says Trump is leaving because of the Middle East after more airstrikes between Iran and Israel. What each side is firing. And calls for better supports for women experiencing early pregnancy loss.
The first time, it was just devastating.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault in Banff, Alberta.
Thanks for joining us here at the G7 summit, where world leaders are now gathering. High-stakes deals are being hammered out, critical to Canadians negotiating a new trade agreement with the United States. And on that, there's some movement. After a one-on-one meeting on the sidelines of the summit, the Prime Minister says Canada and the U.S. have agreed to aim for a deal within a month. But that does not mean it has been smooth diplomatic sailing so far. Part of the team helping track all of the movement here, Katie Simpson, Ashley Burke. So glad to see you. Boy, do we ever need your help, because Katie, after a day, full of talk and negotiations, a surprise from Donald Trump.
Yeah, Donald Trump is leaving, the White House says, because they're dealing with the crisis in the Middle East, and there seems to be some sort of urgent push behind the scenes to get closer to some sort of ceasefire, and things are moving very quickly and very urgently. The G7 is still going to go ahead as planned, even though the most powerful voice at the table is not going to be there. In a sense, Canada is kind of lucky that the bilat with Trump was today. The Prime Minister and President spent about 70 minutes together, and they came out with this announcement saying they're going to work toward a deal in 30 days, which is certainly a significant development.
Mr. President, welcome to Canada.
Thank you very much.
It's a great honor. Happy birthday. A few days short.
A little bit.
A few days short, but...
The nervous energy dissipated quickly as the Prime Minister flattered his guest, hoping to finally make a breakthrough on trade and security talks.
We're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly.
Despite the U.S. president's commitment to tariffs, it appears there has been progress. Hours after the meeting wrapped, Mark Carney posted on social media he and Donald Trump agreed to pursue negotiations toward a deal within the coming 30 days. A statement that is in line with what Trump suggested was possible.
Do you think a deal is achievable within days, within weeks? Is there that kind of runway?
Yeah, it's achievable. Both parties have to agree. Yeah, sure.
Canada has been pushing for across-the-board tariff relief ever since Trump returned to office and launched his global trade war.
We're signalers. We're very proud.
Promising to meet U.S. demands to increase defense spending targets, improve border security,
the Golden Dome for America,
and consider joining Trump's Golden Dome missile defense program. All as Carney tries to reset the relationship which soured under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
The G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in. And I would say that was a mistake.
No one in the Canadian delegation said a word or even flinched when Trump criticized Trudeau and falsely claimed multiple times he was involved in Russia's removal from the G8. It actually happened under Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Carney is trying to focus on the present as a new push toward an agreement kicks into high gear.
We feel a sense of acceleration in the discussions in the last couple of weeks, and that is a very good thing.
So, Katie, at this point, how does Trump's departure affect the rest of the summit?
Well, when the most powerful leader leaves, it limits how much can actually be achieved. The other thing to keep in mind, a lot of world leaders are just arriving now. They were hoping to get some FaceTime on the sidelines of this summit with Trump. That's now all out the window. But again, we should point out there does seem to be a lot of urgency around what it is the White House is doing when it comes to what's going on in the Middle East right now. There does seem to be some movement or some significant developments. And so that has always been a priority for the Americans trying to deal with this crisis.
Absolutely. All right, Katie, thank you. All that happened, of course, on the sidelines today, but, this summit does have, an official agenda. Ashley, you had your eyes on that.
Yeah, Adrian, this is a big test for Mark Carney. It is his first time hosting the summit, and he wants to come out of it with something to show for it, some consensus on key issues. Mark Carney welcoming the world to Canada.
President of the United States of America.
And trying to make this summit about more than its biggest personality. G7 leaders all want to reach deals with Donald Trump, but this meeting in the Rockies is a chance for Canada to set the agenda on its terms.
We're gathering at one of those turning points in history. I think we all recognize that turning point where the world looks to this table for leadership.
Carney says at this moment in history, the world's more dangerous and divided, so they must act together.
We will have open, frank discussions over the course of the next 2 days. We might not agree on absolutely every issue, but where we will cooperate, we will make an enormous difference.
On leaders' first day of private talks, official topics centered around keeping the world safe and protecting communities from escalating conflicts.
Now it's time to give space for diplomacy.
Leaders drafted a joint statement pushing for de-escalation between Israel and Iran, but Trump doesn't intend to sign it, a signal of just how difficult it could be to reach a consensus on some issues.
We don't want to see a summit where tensions are high. There's going to be very difficult dialogue behind closed doors on a wide variety of issues. So I think we're looking for signs that leaders are making progress.
Carney wants to make progress on areas like critical minerals, artificial intelligence, and human smuggling.
Mainly this G7 is about security in a very wider idea of the topic.
And on the sidelines is trying to strengthen ties with other allies as he distances Canada from the U.S.
I love this country.
It's a good country. It's a good country. We do have a very. I love Germany, so it's a very mutual, very strong affinity.
And Ashley, the talks, I guess, are expected to grow a bit tomorrow.
They are expected to grow. There are more world leaders that are going to be coming here to Alberta and joining talks about energy security, but also the ongoing war in Ukraine, including President Zelensky, and in a controversial move, India's Prime Minister too.
Okay, so let's talk about looking ahead. We'll start with you, Ashley. What in particular are you watching for tomorrow?
Well, sources tell me that tomorrow we're expecting Mark Carney to make an announcement about more support for Ukraine. This is part of his plan to boost defense spending, and we're told that we're expected to learn exactly how much he plans to give to help Zelensky out, and we'll be watching to see if it's enough to support the country at a time when it's unclear just how much more support it's going to get from the U.S.
Okay, Katie?
What I'm looking forward to, looking for most, it's sort of down the road a little bit, and that's going to be anything to do with these Canada-U.S. talks. We know there's a new sense of urgency there. There are plans for more talks later this week with American representatives at a lower level than Trump. But really, because they set this sort of 30-day timeline and they actually put it in writing, that's a pass-fail situation. They're either going to achieve it or they're not. And for Mark Carney to put that in writing, it suggests to me that they're pretty confident it's going to happen, given how unpredictable Donald Trump can be. So that is significant, and that's what I think Canadians really should be looking at going forward.
Okay, that there might be something there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Katie, Ashley, thank you very much. Katie, I know we'll be hearing from you a little later in the show. We could talk about this for hours. So again, the White House says the U.S. president is leaving the G7 early because of the Middle East. And Trump himself said he has to get back to Washington. This follows an earlier social media post in which he said people in Tehran, population nearly 10 million, should get out. All of it as Israel and Iran endure more airstrikes. Israeli jets took to the skies to carry out attacks on Iran. Earlier in the day, Israel's military released video, including a strike on the Iranian state broadcaster in Tehran, leaving large plumes of smoke along the skyline. Margaret Evans is in Israel and starts off with that strike captured in the middle of a live broadcast.
The moment an Israeli attack hit Iran's state broadcaster during a live feed, knocking it off the air, at least temporarily. Earlier, the Israeli military warned residents nearby to leave for their own safety. In practice, it's used in both Lebanon and Gaza. Iran's leaders denounced it as psychological warfare. But Israel now claims complete aerial control of the skies above Tehran. There have been large traffic jams as panicked residents flee the capital, those who can. Amir Hossein Mousavi works in a Tehran market stall. Where would we go, he asks. Some people might have money, maybe they can leave, but us, I don't think we're going anywhere. Iran says Israeli strikes have killed more than 220 people since Friday. The Israeli military says it's destroyed a third of Iran's ballistic missile launchers. But in Israel, some Iranian missiles are still finding their way through sophisticated defenses. This apartment building in central Israel suffered a direct hit overnight, turning muddied innards of a family home inside out. 4 people were killed. The blast so strong, 3 nearby tower blocks have been evacuated. Residents allowed back in to collect their belongings today.
A lot of noise of the boom. I was very afraid.
Hagit Avigdori Ma'olem came back for clothes and cat food. She supports Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's decision to go to war with Iran.
But we have no choice because they want to destroy us. We have to defend on us.
For now, with more threats of retaliation, both sides seem determined to continue on their direction of travel, no matter the danger of a still escalating war. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Petah Tikva, Israel.
Back in this country now, CBC News has learned Pierre Polievre will face a leadership review in January at a party convention in Calgary. The Conservative Party's constitution requires one if a leader doesn't resign after losing an election. Polievre also lost his own seat in the last election. He is planning to run for a new one in Alberta. A doctors group has issued new healthcare guidelines for patients experiencing early pregnancy loss. As Alison Northcott explains, the emotional and psychological toll of miscarriage can often be overlooked.
This Toronto hospital has a specialized clinic for early pregnancy, an alternative to the emergency room to support patients through complications like miscarriages.
We provide nursing care, physician care, ultrasound, lab care all in one place, so we can help patients figure out what exactly is going on in their early pregnancy complication.
A new clinical practice guideline by the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada says early pregnancy loss is common and often overlooked as a treatment priority. It calls on clinicians to screen patients for depression after pregnancy loss and for more early pregnancy assessment clinics like the one in Toronto.
We are not talking about, building new facilities. We're talking about leveraging the existence of what we have right now. Having a room just dedicated for these women.
The guideline says early pregnancy loss occurs in about 15% of pregnancies. The mental health impacts can include depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder.
Women can have prolonged mental health issues from this, and research will show that if it's dealt with effectively with compassionate care and the proper follow-up, we lessen that risk.
Another recommendation is to ensure medications that help manage pregnancy loss are free and available across Canada.
What essentially we want is, regardless of where you're receiving your care in Canada, it will be consistent, it will be based on recommendations, and it will be the best care that can be delivered.
It was just devastating because it was my first pregnancy, and my husband and I, we were so excited to finally welcome our first child.
Bethany Murray had 2 pregnancy losses within a year.
Mental health support should be more of a thing when it comes to early pregnancy loss.
She hopes the guidelines lead to more compassion for patients like her within the healthcare system. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
A doctor charged with giving actor Matthew Perry ketamine in the months leading up to his overdose death is set to plead guilty. The Friends star died at his home in October of 2023 from acute effects of ketamine, which caused him to lose consciousness and drown in his hot tub. Authorities say Dr. Salvador Plasencia has agreed to plead guilty to 4 counts of distribution of ketamine. That carries a maximum sentence of 40 years in prison. Well, the RCMP is facing calls to probe China's ties to a Buddhist group on Prince Edward Island.
The organization has been used as a Trojan horse to infiltrate the Western world.
A CBC News investigation. Ottawa's new push to keep Canadian tourism strong.
This pass is about discovering and reconnecting with nature.
But some worry this could overwhelm our national parks. And Trump is already stirring the pot and leaving the G7 early.
The bar is low, but it's still possible to trip over it.
What does this mean for Mark Carney and the rest of the summit? We're back in 2. Just take a moment and let this sink in. That is the breathtaking beauty of Banff, Alberta, in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. It's one of only 2 communities in Canada's national park system with an elected mayor and council. We are right here this week for high-stakes meetings between national leaders from the G7. There is a lot more on that coming up in just a bit. Now, on Prince Edward Island, a battle is playing out over religion and land. At the heart of it, Buddhist monasteries that, according to information obtained by CBC Radio Canada, have ties to the Chinese government. As Brigitte Bureau shows us, 2 former federal investigators think that relationship warrants a public inquiry and a police investigation.
The vast Buddhist monasteries, numbering some 1,300 nuns and monks, are part of Bliss and Wisdom, a group born in Taiwan, the small country China is threatening to invade. Chen Tuan Liang is a professor of Buddhist studies in Taiwan. He says many Taiwanese Buddhist groups have been infiltrated by pro-China forces, including Bliss and Wisdom. These groups are willing to echo the Chinese Communist Party's messaging to conserve their status under a Chinese government, he says.
Research conducted in Mandarin on websites in Taiwan and China enabled Radio-Canada to trace many religious gatherings organized by Chinese government agencies in which Bliss and Wisdom participated.
Bliss and Wisdom took part in one of those meetings in 2023 under the theme One Chinese Family, Hand in Hand to the Future, a reference to the annexation of Taiwan. A revealing meeting, says this expert.
Bliss and Wisdom, by participating in that event, especially with that kind of slogan, demonstrate that it's in agreement with the Communist Party.
Bliss and Wisdom monk Zinan spoke to Radio-Canada on behalf of the group's spiritual leader Zenru. Both of them live in P.E.I, but were traveling in Singapore on an Asian tour when we spoke to him.
Participation alone does not support the evidence that we are under the influence and control by CCP.
Yet the Buddhist Association of China, involved in many of these meetings, reports directly to the United Front, China's main tool of interference.
The United Front work is feeding people with what Beijing wants you to understand. The other element is to neutralize the dissidents.
Michel Junot-Katsuya and Gary Clement, 2 former federal investigators, have been looking into Bliss and Wisdom's links to China for months, and they are asking the RCMP to launch an investigation.
The organization has been used as a Trojan horse to infiltrate the Western world, in Canada in particular.
In Taiwan, Fan Yin was once a high-ranking Bliss and Wisdom monk. He was the first to sound the alarm. In 2017, he slammed the door to the group, accusing it of being controlled by China, an accusation he maintains to this day. He says he must report that Bliss and Wisdom is involved in the CCP's United Front operations. The RCMP says it does not comment on potential or ongoing investigations, but the monasteries are under a provincial investigation to determine whether they have acquired more territory than is legally permitted. Brigitte Bureau, CBC News, Ottawa.
In West Virginia, at least 6 people are dead, including a toddler, due to weekend flash flooding. On Saturday, more than 10 centimeters of torrential rain fell in 30 minutes. Several people remain missing. The forecast for the next few days shows more rainfall, more thunderstorms. Well, Ottawa is rolling out a new travel pass to boost local tourism.
It's about enjoying the places and experiences that brings us together and make Canada strong.
What you need to know if you want to take part. A G7 curveball. Trump is leaving early.
The last thing they want is for the American president to feel like he's being ganged up against.
So how did leaders handle their brief time with him? And what we know about the missiles Iran and Israel are firing at each other. The National takes you deeper into the stories shaping your world. Next.
There's Bouchard. McDavid to the net. Score!
Well, his entire focus right now is the Stanley Cup final, but Connor McDavid knows exactly where he will be next February. He is one of 6 players given early invites to Canada's Olympic team. McDavid will be joined in Milan by perennial favorite Sidney Crosby, along with Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, Braden Point, and Sam Reinhart. Well, Ottawa is temporarily making it free to visit national parks and offering via rail trips for kids at no cost. This is part of an attempt to encourage Canadians to rediscover the country this summer. But as Olivia Stefanovich found out, not everyone is on board.
From stunning sunsets to jaw-dropping mountain views, Canada is full of natural wonders that many Canadians don't often get to explore. Now the federal government is trying to change that.
If you don't have a Canadian bucket list, now is the time to create that bucket list.
The Canada Strong Pass aims to keep travel here instead of across the border.
Our government is making it easier for families to choose Canada as they make their summer plans.
Starting this Friday, all national parks, marine conservation areas, and historic sites administered by Parks Canada will be free, plus a 25% discount on camping fees.
It's definitely well-timed with the heightened sense of patriotism that we have right now.
We won't go to the United States.
Woohoo! I love that. I think it needs to be free.
But not all park visitors are sold.
If we stop paying as we use it, so who will pay for that?
There are concerns the extra traffic could damage fragile ecosystems and add stress to places already overrun like Banff, Alberta.
We are already full in the summer in terms of our parking lots and our sidewalks, and so this will just continue to exacerbate that pressure that we're seeing.
The pass also gives children free access to national museums and free via rail service when traveling with an adult. Young people aged 18 to 24 get a 25% discount on train tickets.
This will encourage Canadians to explore their backyard and beyond.
There's no need to register. The summer discounts automatically apply. Canadians have until September 2nd to take advantage of the pass and see what their home country has to offer. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, let's break down the news shaping our world. As Israel and Iran wage war in the sky, we crunch the numbers on their power to strike and defend. But first, how to win at the G7 when one leader holds so many cards.
There's nothing really to stop him from just getting up and leaving.
And wouldn't you know it, Trump has decided to cut short his time in Canada. One more complication in a time of constant disruption. So let's see what impact he did have. It goes well beyond the membership of the G7. The 51st G7 summit, hosted by Canada, the very country Donald Trump would still like to make the 51st state. Awkward. So how does Canada emerge with a win, and what would that even look like? What is a successful summit then?
Typically, or this year?
What a good question. One word keeps coming up about this summit: unpredictable. And you know what, or rather who, that's all about: Donald Trump. And shocker, a mid-summit curveball, Trump deciding to leave the summit at the end of day one. So much for the meetings planned for Tuesday. At this point then, the definition of success looks very different.
The bar is low, but it's still possible to trip over it.
Quick reminder here, the G7, or Group of Seven, was created in 1975, and in the beginning it was a G6. France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the US.
It was created around the time of the first oil crisis to have conversations around how to manage this global instability around the economy.
Canada was invited to join the next year, and the G7 was born. The host nation rotates among members, and that country sets the agenda for the meeting.
The point of the G7 is really to get the world's leading democratic countries together around the table at one time so they can talk about some of the most politically significant challenges facing them, as well as some of the most challenging economic issues as well.
Normally what's happening, it's recession, it's the oil shock, it's international economic factors from the outside.
And that's where this year is especially tricky. Many of the problems seem to be coming from inside the G7. These summits are short. Usually the objective is a single document, a communique with a language all the leaders can agree on.
That was Charlevoix.
Elika Kotsis with the University of Toronto's G7 research group has been studying those communiques since 1994.
From 75 until 2018, there was a certain level of predictability to these events. The leaders would come, they would agree, there would be a document issued. And I think it was so repetitive for, general audiences that there wasn't perhaps a lot of attention on these events until something dramatic happens. And something dramatic did happen in Charlevoix.
Charlevoix, Quebec, 2018. The last time Donald Trump was in Canada. He left that G7 early too, skipping the sessions on climate change, but not before giving his agreement to the communique. Can you tell from this now famous photo that this was not an easy process? Still, mission accomplished if you're then Prime Minister and host Justin Trudeau.
And I'm happy to announce that we've released a joint communique by all 7 countries.
But then, on board Air Force One, Trump watched Trudeau's closing news conference. And when Trudeau made some comments related to tariffs,
Canadians were polite, we're reasonable, but we also will not be pushed around.
I think that Justin probably didn't know that Air Force One has about 20 televisions.
The Air Force One tweet storm was unleashed. Trump ordered his team to withdraw U.S. support from that finalized communique, a G7 nightmare. And remember that photo? John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, was there by his side. Well, nice to see you, Ambassador.
Thanks for having me.
By the way, he is now a Trump critic. If you can help us understand what it was about Prime Minister Trudeau's actions that set him off.
Well, he's incredibly thin-skinned, and he doesn't like it when people say things that he can't respond to. He took the weapon that was at hand, which was to withdraw from the communique, and blamed it on Trudeau.
We know that the leaders will want to talk about economic instability, but I'm curious how they do that when some of them can draw a direct line between that instability and Donald Trump and the tariffs.
I think people will be very worried that if they say something that Trump doesn't like, that whatever prospects for a deal they had might be lost right there.
And for Prime Minister Carney, a win and a loss?
So a loss would be coming into this and then going out in a worse situation on the tariffs than he came in. I think for Carney and really for most of the others, a win is just getting through it and not having anything change.
So how's it going? Well, in roughly 24 hours, Carney seems to have a promise of a trade deal within 30 days. So that's something. But the U.S. president also arrived with some predictable talking points, taking mere minutes to bring up Russia.
They threw Russia out, which I claimed was a very big mistake, even though I wasn't in politics then. I was very loud about it.
Tiny history lesson coming at you again. Russia was invited to join the G7 in 1998, creating the G8. But Putin's invasion of Crimea saw him ousted from the group in 2014, an ousting Trump has criticized repeatedly.
I'd love to have him back. I think it was a mistake to throw him out. If it was the G8, if Russia were in it, I think you probably wouldn't have this ridiculous, deadly war going on right now.
That war Russia started with Ukraine expected to feature heavily on the agenda here. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is one of the invited guests who was counting on a face-to-face meeting with the U.S. president. That won't happen, but maybe there is something else he can go home with.
If you're Zelensky, you're hoping that, in fact, that you can get the G7 to give very strong indications of support. You're hoping that you're able to cut deals in terms of the continuance of the supply of weapons and ammunition that they need to maintain this fight.
And if all of that doesn't sound tough enough, also on the G7 agenda, AI, energy security, critical minerals, trade. Hard to find any of that that doesn't revolve around Donald Trump.
The last thing they want is for the American president to feel like he's being ganged up against, because, you know, there's nothing really to stop him from just getting up and leaving, and actually things ending up in a worse position. And so this is an opportunity ripe for diplomacy, for quiet, considered, slow, careful, meticulous diplomacy to move the ball in a positive direction.
Well, he did just that. Get up and leave, that is, but maintains it's about the Middle East, not because he's angry or feeling isolated. And a reminder from John Bolton, do not ever underestimate the power of how Trump feels he's being treated.
Trump sees international relations as being the equivalent of the personal relations that he has with other heads of state. It's a gross oversimplification, but that's how he sees it. So a lot does ride on how all the leaders interact.
And after the chaos of Charlevoix, Prime Minister Mark Carney isn't even risking the trouble of a joint communique, isn't planning on issuing one, moving that low bar even lower. So we're joined again by Katie Simpson to talk about how Prime Minister Mark Carney is sort of navigating all of this first. On this first day, you were right there for that public part of the meeting between Trump and Carney. Can you take us into the room? What was that like?
There certainly was like a nervous energy there, and it's something that some of my colleagues who were in the Oval Office meeting described. Because Trump is so unpredictable, and because we have seen so many of those blow-ups before in the public, no one wants to do anything that might either catch Trump off guard or offend him in some way. So it sort of started with a nervous energy, but then Trump seemed to be open to, having conversations about the places where Canada and the United States disagree. And that's all the Canadians can ask for right now, because they are still far apart on the issue related to tariffs and trying to sort of get some sort of trade and economic security deal. But in the room, all the reporters sort of rush in and crowd around. It's a very small room. The Americans are on one side, the Canadians are on the other side.
Of course.
And everyone just tries to get their little position so you can try and maybe shout a question or two in there. And Trump will take questions. That is the thing about him. And he'll look around the room, and if you shout the loudest, you might get a question in there. And so most of the questions were from the Canadian reporters were about trade, because we recognize what a high priority issue this is for Canadian workers, Canadian businesses, and sort of for the Canadian economy to grow, that kind of thing.
And you've got a great set of pipes, so you're good at getting those questions in. To say they will have a deal in 30 days, what does it say to you that Prime Minister Mark Carney felt like he was willing to even say those words and sort of commit to them?
There's two things Canadians should think about. There's this sort of simple answer where, well, perhaps there is enough progress that, they're comfortable enough to say they think they can hit this landing zone. They think they can do it in 30 days. They're going to work toward it. And, they've put it on paper, and that's the goal. The other thing we should keep in mind is, remember, Donald Trump hiked those tariffs on steel and aluminum from 25% to 50%. That has a massive impact on Canada. And Canada hasn't retaliated yet. We've heard Mark Carney say that he's considering what the next moves are, but Canada hasn't done that just yet. Is perhaps this 30-day sort of goal a signal to the Americans to say, okay, we've got 30 days to sort this out and try and get this dealt with, or else perhaps we're going to have to take some retaliation? Is it sort of a marker, not just for hopefully progress, but a signal to the Americans to say, hey, we've got a timeline here. We got to get going on this, and we need to make some progress.
Okay, so very briefly, Trump admitted as much today. He knows that his tariffs are a sticking point, right, in this conversation. Any signs that the Canadians are convincing him to shift?
This is Donald Trump's favorite economic policy. It's sort of, he campaigned on it. He's made it a core part of his economic agenda. And so the Canadians really have to find a way, a sort of sweet spot to make the argument, well, maybe if the tariffs are okay for others, maybe they're not so great for us, and sort of find a way to sort of get in there so that this doesn't affect Canada so badly, because things are not moving in the same sort of united front that they had in the past, where we've seen countries sort of work together to try and achieve a common goal. Right now, it's really sort of everyone's out for themselves.
Okay. Katie Simpson, great to see you. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
So Iran and Israel locked in a missile fight. How long will this last? What we know, what we don't know about their weapons.
I just have such a feeling of pride. It's unexplainable.
A historic shift at a St. John's fire station coming up in our moment. Israel, Iran, and a volley of deadly airstrikes. We break down what each side can unleash. Plus, the nuclear question. Does the war make Iran weaker or bolder? Let's start with that air war. David Common shows us that just days into this conflict, things have already shifted.
The skies over both Iran and Israel may seem ignited by missiles, but there are already signs Iran's shooting fight is slowing down. It is believed to have had at least 2,000 ballistic missiles, but Israel's been targeting its stockpiles and launchers. So, by Sunday, day 3 of the conflict, Iran was already firing fewer at Israel. While Tehran has the largest number of ballistic missiles in the Middle East, it must still conserve. And some of what it's firing is landing. Israel's much vaunted Iron Dome system, highly effective against the slower and smaller rockets of Hamas and Hezbollah, is of limited use against Iran's ballistic missiles, which shoot more than 1,000 kilometers up before dropping to their target at supersonic speed or faster. Instead, Israel uses its Arrow system, designed with the Americans to intercept missiles outside the atmosphere. It's more than 90% effective, but each shoot-down can cost $2 million, and those interceptors are also in limited supply. This means strategically, Iran is choosing its targets carefully, and Israel may be choosing which missiles to intercept and which not to. Israel says it wants to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Now, to do that, it's been striking here, the above-ground fuel enrichment facility at Natanz. But fully destroying the one below ground is much harder. Then there's Iran's deeply buried enrichment facility, Fordo. For now, it is impossible for Israel to destroy it unless they can get inside. From the skies above, the only non-nuclear weapon which could destroy Fordo is a 30,000-pound munition called the Massive Ordnance Penetrator. Only the U.S. has that bomb, and the B-2 bomber aircraft needed to deliver it. So far, the Americans say they don't want to be involved in any bombing runs inside Iran. Iran, though, says it's moving the nuclear fuel there out. Were it to lose Fordo, it would likely mean an end to Iran's nuclear ambitions for years to come. Meanwhile, Iran appears to have lost control over some of its own skies. Israel has destroyed the anti-aircraft defenses inside Iran and has been flying its own fighter planes in without getting shot down. This is what's called air superiority.
Let's bring in Janice Stein, founding director of the Munk School of Global Affairs. Janice, Iran has also claimed that it is using a very powerful guided ballistic missile. That would be a munition we've never seen the country use before. What do you make of those claims?
I'm not wholly persuaded about that, Adrian, because we are not seeing a significant change in the rate at which these missiles are being intercepted. We should, if this was a hypersonic guided maneuverable solid fuel missile, and Iran has claimed all of that.
Okay. Interestingly, so we were watching Israel targeting Iran's nuclear projects. Is it your sense that that will make the regime in Iran slow down on nuclear development, or could it just mobilize it to try to move faster? Say, see, we're being attacked, we have to go faster.
There's no question it could go either way. It is entirely possible that Iran will rush to break out. It has moved some of that enriched fuel, it claims, to a secret location, and it could race to build a bomb and announce that it has done that, but it will not have the opportunity to test that weapon or to marry it with a delivery system.
So we know that Israel has targeted also nuclear scientists. Is there not a whole cohort of nuclear science students sort of waiting in the wings? I mean, that alone won't necessarily hurt Iran's nuclear program.
You are right. These are clearly the leaders of the program, but this is not novel technology, Adrian, and there's a very rich, sophisticated scientific community in Iran. So I would not place a great deal of weight on that.
I guess what we know about wars is that they're really easy to start, less so, you know, how they end, how you even know in a way that they're over. So I'm curious for Israel, what on earth is success or end game here?
You know, a successful end would be that Iran no longer be permitted to engage in enrichment on Iranian soil. That's what they've asked for. The Ayatollah Khamenei has dug in repeatedly and said that Iran has that right under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and he will not concede. That's the standoff that we're facing, and it is up to the mediators now to craft a solution that lets both of them off the hook.
Yeah, some dangerous days ahead. All right, Janice Stein, as always, thank you.
So welcome.
Coming up, the team of all women taking over one fire station.
Yeah, we still call Manning. We're not fussy. We don't care. We're not intimidated at all.
How the group made history in our moment. These firefighting women made their mark this month when they became the first all-female crew ever deployed together in the St. John's Regional Fire Department. So in a male-dominated field and in the department's 130-year history, this talented team of trailblazers showed they can get the job done. That is what makes our moment tonight.
It's amazing. Like it's so amazing. I get goosebumps when I think about it. We just said, oh my God, wouldn't it be great to get all the girls together? We're starting to get to a point now where we have enough girls that we'd be able to man a station. Yeah, we still call Manning. We're not fussy. We don't care. We're not intimidated at all. I probably did it out of all selfish reasons first, just wanting to work with all girls. What came out of it was something more than I could ever imagine, is that the camaraderie and how all the girls got to know each other better. Some of the girls had never worked before together and just seen people in passing or just knew someone was hired. And out of working together, we all realized how really nice, cool, and happy and funny we all were. So it was great. We ended off with like a massive structure fire, and we were there first, and they did their job and they extinguished it. I couldn't be more prouder. I was like, I don't know, it was awesome.
Captain Gina Burke, you just heard from there, was the very first woman hired in that fire department back in 1992. She said she plans to retire after 33 years. It took a long time to make that shift a reality. I know they'll miss her there. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us here in Banff, Alberta. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app. Subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.